welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, everybody. This is Barney Levantino. Welcome to the latest chapter of Turn the Page, the podcast of Syosset Library. And I am joined today by Gary Grossman and by Ed Fuller, authors of the Red Hotel series. The latest entry in the series is Red Deception. And gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I'm looking forward to talking to you. I read both books and fascinating, a little different take on your typical thriller and spy story. So talk a little bit about the newest entry, Red Deception.
Well, number one, thank you for having us. It's great to be here with you and your listeners. As you look at the books, they look very similar. And so since you've read both, I'm going to give you a little lead from the Red Hotel. The Red Hotel really sets the stage, and most people think that the red in Red Hotel either deals with Russia or with the hotel burning or something like that. It doesn't. It deals with the codes that we used and had to develop to handle security levels and provide security for our guests. So we're continuing that theme in the series. The story itself is about a guy named Dan, and Dan, I don't know him very well, but he has some of my past history in it and working with the hotel company. And I was international totally for 22 years, so I got to see a lot of locations. The story takes stories from me and incorporates them into entries and intrigues that you would not really expect, and that's what makes it a little different because they're real. Now, I tried to write this story. I tried a couple of times. I'd written a business book, should be able to do a novel. So I sat down, the first chapter. The sun was beautiful. The palm trees were swaying. They were on the beach and they made love. Chapter 2, they were in the frozen north. They were in front of a fireplace. The wine was out. At least I got the wine out. And they made love. Chapter 3, I'm tired. So I realized that I was missing something in my skill base. And that came to be a reality with me. So I needed help. And Gary can pick it up from here.
Well, I think you're hearing from Ed Fuller that Ed is the real deal. Ed was...
I'm going to interject one thing. As I was reading this and I was reading Ed's bio, I kind of made a note to myself, Dan Riley, alter ego. Or is that your fantasy life?
Well, no, it's a bit of both. Barney was fantasy. The wife watches this very carefully.
I met Ed and discovered so quickly that he, as the former president of Marriott, or when he was the former president of Marriott International, lived in two worlds. He lived in the hotel world business and also international intelligence. He was as much in the anti-terrorism business as the hotel business. And the stories that he had in his nonfiction business book, You Can't Lead with Your Feet on the Desk, became some of the ideas that began working into Red Hotel and then Red Deception, but also just sitting and meeting and talking with Ed it was apparent to me that not only was I in a fabulous opportunity working with or meeting with one of the most interesting people I'd ever met in my entire life, but together as collaborators, me as a thriller writer, picking up where Ed had said, okay, he needed a collaborator. I've written numerous thrillers. I'm a TV producer as well, documentarian, but usually I'm making things up. I've been thinking the unthinkable. I kind of get to the unknowable, sometimes even the unspeakable. Ed had to deal with all of those things in real life. And in Red Hotel, we're dealing with a Putin, a very loosely disguised Putin character named Nikolai Gorshkov, who wants to do exactly what Putin wants to do and wanted to do ever since the Berlin Wall fell and communism, the reign of communism ended in Soviet Russia. He wants to rebuild the old Soviet Empire, taking all of the former Eastern Bloc countries and putting them together again. That's a theme that runs through Red Hotel. It continues in Red Deception, but the target in Red Deception, our new book, is really America's infrastructure. We were writing that before it became the news every single day, and how vulnerable our infrastructure is, whether it's bridges and roads and tunnels or Hoover Dam. And asking why the word deception has to do with the attack on infrastructure. It's a deception by our Nikolai Gorshkov character to take our eyes off the prize.
You know,
And
there are dozens and shelves full of terrorists come and blow up the bridge or attack the building stories out there. I mean, I've got literally, dozens of shelves full of them here in the library. These books are flat out scary in that I get the sense, and I think that this was kind of the point of them, is that the technical and the factual aspects of these things in terms of me going and checking into a hotel somewhere and I feel, snug as a bug in a rug, as they say, and I'm not. And likewise, our infrastructure, the vulnerabilities that you point out, really take these books to a different level. I mean, on the flat out thriller level, they're terrific, but in the sense of really throwing you a fright, they work on that level too, and they should be a wake up call to people out there in the hotel industry. I hope that they would be, as well as in government, in terms of doing what needs to be done to really secure the infrastructure.
Totally agree. And to a great extent, the incidents you had a chance to read, the first one being Red Hotel, in that opener, you were in the Tokyo Hotel and the Olympics weren't going on. So you had a comfortable room, and then all of a sudden the hotel blew up. In reality, that was the Marriott Hotel in actually in Jakarta that actually had the bomber. And we just took the story actually as it happened and transferred it to Tokyo, which is what I could never do, but Gary did with just so much comfort and just said, here it goes. And we were able to take that story with us. And so each of these stories has a basis of fact that should concern people to be knowledgeable about what's going on around them. They should feel safe. Well, I'm not going to get into brands, but they should feel safe in one of the hotel companies because we've spent a lot of time and a lot of money on taking care of those safety factors. But to tell the story, we had to talk about the incidents we faced and the challenges we faced. And then I got together with Chef Gary, and he was able to just blend it together. And you're correct, Barney was in my dreams, but not reality. And so the fact is that we were able to add some characters that connected the characters. And Gary's a fabulous chef in being able to make that bouillabaisse work.
Yeah,
Maybe
no,
at the keyboard, not in the kitchen. Thank you, Ed.
interesting. It's when I first was approached about doing this discussion of Red Deception. I had not read the previous book, and I don't like jumping into series in the middle. So I took the time and I picked up Red Hotel, and I started reading, the blurbs on it. And I was like, gee, how do you turn a hotel executive into this action figure, action hero? And one of the first things I thought about is I kind of went back to the old early Robert Ludlum books, not the Bourne series, but the books that sort of plucked people who are in otherwise ordinary lives and ordinary circumstances, and they kind of get thrown into these international conspiracy spy situations. And on one level, the book's kind of like that, but Dan Riley's not exactly that. He brings a little bit more to the table than your typical MBA would bring. And his background kind of comes significantly into play as the stories play out.
One of the factors is that a lot of people don't know what goes on behind the back door, behind the house, which is the hotel term, or behind a stage. In reality, when Gary and I started talking, he was kind of fishing for that thing that maybe brought us together even closer. And he said, well, have you worked with any of the three initial groups? And I said, sure, CIA, FBI. He said, in reality? I said, absolutely. We were assigned a CIA agent and we worked with them directly. Oh, that kind of put a light in Gary's eyes at that point.
Ed's stories still astound me. We're right now working on the third book in the series, Red Chaos. It'll be out next year. And we'll be fleshing out the story, and Ed will say, I have another experience I want to share with you. And often, even during the interviews, Barney, I'll be taking notes because Ed will come up with something that I just even haven't heard yet. And the fact that he had to rise, you talk about the Ludlum kind of early characters, that Ed had to rise to the occasion is ultimately what we hope people in these dangerous situations will be able to do. We're not so much fish out of water, but we can become the people we were meant to be in a circumstance. Maybe there's a little hero in all of us and a lot more hero in some of us. And Ed's stories, and I'm sure you can tell one right now regarding even Panama, you can't make this up. You can't make up what happened in Panama with the hotel.
That was a setup if I've ever had one. So bear with me. The Panama Marriott was built in the same time as Noriega was climbing the ladder in Panama. And I know the three of us know Noriega. I'm not sure the world does, but a clear dictator. And because of his control of the Panama Canal, people in the US wanted him out. And America actually put in forces to get control of Panama away from him. Our hotel, the GM was in I think, Houston for surgery, but the hotel was managed totally by Panamanian staff. And in the early days of my tenure, this situation was building around the hotel, but we, as usual, had hotel guests as well as reporters staying in the hotel. And Noriega's troops were obviously coming to our door like any other hotel, and our management saw them coming up, and so they acted very quickly. they put all of the guests and any national that was not Panamanian in the laundry, down in the hotel laundry, the dryers, the washers. They stuffed them in and then stuffed laundry over them. Little smelly experience for some. And so the fact was, when Noriega's troops hit, they walked every floor, machine gunned every room, through the door or opened the door. And I've walked that floor and seen all the damage they did. But when they got down to the laundry, our managers looked like they were doing normal work, just shuffling around. And they looked around and it looked normal to them. They went upstairs and left the hotel. We later got some help from the Army and from some of our trucks, because we were in the in-flight business at that time, got out of it a long time ago, and took the trucks over to get the guests behind American line.
Gary, you're right. If you wrote that, you wouldn't believe it.
That's it.
It's just mind-boggling that what actually takes place. And that's, I said,
it's true.
yeah,
It's
that's
true.
that's what makes these books a little scarier than normal. You know, Dan Riley's an interesting character, and I'm watching in the two books as he's developing, and he seems to be on something of a trajectory where his personal and his professional lives are becoming a little bit more, well, the lines are getting blurred. And my question going forward is, how is he going to continue to manage and balance being pulled in both directions, personally and professionally? And I guess that's something that we're going to see a little further in the later installments of the books, but it's interesting the way he's being dragged.
Well, fabulous question. And it's the one I, as recently as last week, asked Ed as well. Because in Red Chaos, the third book in the series, he has been given readers will find that he's going to be given a year to decide from the head of the corporation which path he's going to take. And although Red Chaos doesn't take a full year to unfold, in fact, it happens in a relatively short amount of time. My question to Ed was exactly that. And my question to Ed is, what might have happened to him in real life had he continued to work with Marriott and then been drawn into the CIA or the State Department? So I think book 4 is probably going to go into that. Ed, can you tell me where we're going to go?
Well, let's see. To me, there are two scales you have to work from. So I had 3 years in the Army, and I did my time in Vietnam, and Dan had to be updated and go to Afghanistan. So at this point, I think of two things. Let's talk monetary. Dan's getting paid very nicely for the job he's doing. Government pay is probably about 15% of what Dan is getting. So that's an issue Dan has to wrestle with. Dan loves the intrigue, all the work, but he has really fixed a lot of the problems that that company had in its security and safety area. But there's going to be something exciting. And even if you read my first book, You Can't Lead with Your Feet on the Desk, it talks about relationships and the like. And Dan has been working on his relationships at the highest level. And so we won't do a spoiler alert, but you're going to become more aware of Elizabeth Matthews. Elizabeth, by the way, is my daughter, who said when the first book came out, "You made me Secretary of State." I said, "Yeah, you're doing fine." She says, "I want to be president." I said,
Anytime.
"Well, we'll work with that." And then Matthews is Kathleen Matthews, who is married to Chris and used to work with me in Marriott, and who I really had a great relationship with and still do. But we've been coaching both of them, and they're going to help me understand options that may be available. Can't say right now.
One thing that's in terms of the relationships that Riley has is his relationship with Bob Heath, the CIA officer. And initially, the approach, Heath is very much indebted to Dan Riley for basically saving his life in Afghanistan. And it seems as if things have switched around a little bit right now, and the balance sheet between the two has kind of gone the other way. And that relationship has changed. I think that Riley's kind of aware of it, and I don't think he's outwardly acknowledged it yet, but I think he understands that relationship has really significantly changed as between himself and he, but also as between Riley's approach to his work and to his coworkers and his colleagues.
Well, Barney, as you've said that, I'm right now working on a pivotal scene in the climax for Red Chaos with Ed, and you've just given me a note to put in that scene. So I appreciate it, because they do have a long relationship from Afghanistan. They have a brotherly relationship as well. They can speak shorthand to each other, and the equation has flipped more to the CIA helping Dan in the hotel business. But in this pivotal scene, there's just a couple of sentences I can put in to really readdress and do a callback to the very beginning. So I think
you
that's
just
a
made
terrific
the
observation.
acknowledgments.
There you go. Barney, you're in.
There we go.
You know, it's unlike
Okay.
the Bourne books, or James Bond, and so many of the thrillers. I love Lee Child's Jack Reacher books, for sure. But those are virtually superhero characters who, for all intents and purposes, solve everything on their own. My dad was in law enforcement. My mother was in politics. You look at the things that Ed has done with his work at Marriott International over the years. It's not just one person who's able to solve something. It does take smart people talking to other smart people and sharing the information they have. And when that happens, crimes can be solved, terrorist plots can be uncovered, deaths can be prevented. And when you think about 9/11, as we all do all the time, and if you were running a flight school in Arizona or New Mexico, wherever it happened, and a couple of people walk in and say, yes, we want to learn how to fly a jumbo jet. Terrific, I can teach you how to fly, and we can teach you how to land and take off. No. We don't need to learn how to take off and land. We just want to learn how to fly. Wouldn't you think that would prompt a phone call to somebody at some level of authority? It didn't. In our world, maybe it's a smarter world that we're hoping that we have. Dan does have the contacts, as Ed had the contacts, and shares information. And it really kind of trickles down to some of the things I've learned, and it's definitely in Red Deception. A housekeeper finds a garbage can in a room filled with batteries. Well, that set off a light bulb for her, metaphorically. All these wrappers for batteries. Could it be a photographer who's shooting? Well, these days, photographers have rechargeable batteries. No. What do people who make bombs need? Batteries. And that's one of the things that I learned from Ed, that hotel staff are trained to look for. Never knew that. Well, that's a key plot point in Red Deception to move things forward.
Well,
and their posters throughout, or time has changed, but their posters throughout the back of our hotels that said, if you see something, say something. And so that was for the associate, the employee, more than anybody else. And that plays back to Gary's point.
Gentlemen, it's really been fascinating speaking to you both. The books, as I said, they kind of took me by surprise in terms of where it went. When I first got into Red Hotel, I was like, gee, again, I'm not sure how they're going to work this character, but they're really fascinating. They're fascinating on the thriller level. They're frightening on the factual level. And everybody out there, come to the library, pick them up. They're books that you should read to make you aware of what's going on out there in the world. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to book 3 and beyond. And good luck with it. And again, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks so much.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.